My name's Alan Reid. I'm the portfolio holder for the environment for Warwick District Council. I wanted to show that. I actually feel quite passionate when I see that. But that's really why we're all here today. Up there is the closing window, which again I think is a very emotive way of saying time is not on our side. Policies currently in place point to a 2.8 degrees temperature rise by the end of the century. Implementation of the current pledges will only reduce this to 2.4 to 2.6 degrees by the end of the century. The temperatures on the CAP thermometer are median warming as estimates in 2100. This means that there is a 50% chance that the calculated temperature would be exceeded if the given emissions pathway is followed. For example, there is a 50% chance that warming associated with our pledges and target scenario exceeds 2.1 degrees in 2100. I think this quotation is also very apt. Hope means that another world might be possible. Not promised, not guaranteed. Hope calls for action. Action is impossible without hope. Before I hand over to Dave Barber, I just wanted to make a few points myself. In 2019, the Warwick District Administration's new administration, under the new leader of Andrew Day, made a commitment to put the environment and climate change at the administration's very heart. Andrew Day created the portfolio of environment and climate change, which I had the honour to take. And it was a unanimous declaration by this council to declare a climate emergency. And we created the new post of Climate Change Programme Director, which was taken up by Dave Barber. A climate action plan was agreed in February 2020 and then updated and revised in November 2021. We involved climate experts, but just as importantly, we also involved a Warwick People's Inquiry. And I would like to finish with one thing which is very close to my heart, which is we have got a development planning document which is currently being submitted to the inspector for examination in public to make all new housing net zero. God wish that that will get passed. I would like now to pass over to Dave Barber.
Thanks, Alan. I want to say a little bit about what Warwick District Council is doing in response to the climate emergency, and just to try and give a quick overview. But I won't spend very long doing that, because really the purpose of this session today is to take the themes that Alan's been talking about, which are kind of big global themes and big global challenges, and to think about how we locally can play our part in that call to action that we heard there from David Attenborough. There's lots and lots already going on across Warwick District and across Warwickshire in general, and that's something that is really positive and we should all sort of feel encouraged by. But as well as what we're all already doing, I think we all know there's so much more that we need to be doing. So the purpose today is really to hear about lots of those specific local examples that are going on, really to inspire each other to do more and to think about what more we can do, to have the opportunity to network and share those good ideas amongst those of us who are here today. But importantly, because those of us who are here today are people who are already thinking about these sorts of things, importantly, to take the messages from today out into our communities, to our friends, to our colleagues at work and so on, and to think together about how we can respond to that call for action. So what we're going to hear today, as you've seen from the agenda, it's a lot of very short, sharp talks about things that are going on. None of those talks are going to be going to be long. They're all sort of 10 minutes long. And the purpose of that is so that we all get that feel for the kind of range of activities, whether it's what the councils are doing, or whether it's what community groups are doing, or indeed, in some cases, individual stories about what they're doing personally. So that's what we're hoping to get out of today. There will be a break partway through, which is another networking opportunity. And at the end, we'd encourage you all to stay and to network with each other and to take a look at the stalls that are through in room 21. So I hope you enjoy the day. The last thing I will say, there it goes, that's the timer. That's really timely timer, because I will be timing each of the talks, and I'm really sorry about this, but we do have so many talks that we need to cover, and we have 10-minute slots for each of you. So I'll be sitting there in the eye line of the speakers, and if you see me waving gently, that means you're coming to the end. If you see me waving frantically, you'll know what that means as well. So please do try and stick to the time, because I think we want to hear from everybody who's on the agenda today. You'll be pleased to know that timer isn't the end of my time, so I'm not yet over my limit. So I'll just quickly go on to one or two things that the council is doing, an overview of these things. We've got two major challenges that we're thinking about when it comes to climate change. One is about limiting the amount of carbon emissions and trying to play our part in limiting the extent of climate change. But we're also recognising in the sort of some of the data that Alan's just talked about that climate change is coming whether we act now or not. It's really the extent to which it's going to hit us. So we need to also be ready for that and adapting to it and thinking about our services as a council, but also thinking about how our communities need to respond to those sorts of things as well. And in that context, the council has three ambitions. One is about what we're doing as an organisation and to get to net zero as an organisation as quickly as possible. Ambitions 2 is about working with our partners and playing our part in helping our communities, our businesses, the district as a whole to minimise carbon emissions and play our part in reaching net zero. And the third is about that adaptation. And we'll be hearing about some specific examples of all of those things during the morning. I'll skip through some of these because I really don't want to be the first person to go over my time limit. Yeah, as examples of things that we're doing in terms of our own organisation, we are looking at staff travel. We're certainly working with our contractors to try and minimise the impacts that they have. And we're trying to rise to the challenge of decarbonising our buildings. The town hall, which we're in today, is a particularly challenging one. Listed building, Victorian, very leaky. Big challenge for us to work out how we can minimise carbon emissions. Some of our other buildings are easier to deal with. So we'll be hearing a little bit about that today. Moving on to that issue about how we minimise carbon emissions right across the district. This slide just shows where the carbon emissions come from in Warwick District. So you can see the big dark blue wedge on the bottom left-hand side is from transport. And we'll certainly be hearing about transport initiatives today, and that's a really important part for all of us to be thinking about. County Council have got a great stall in the coffee room with some information about active travel and so on, so do take a look at that too. And the orangey, peachy wedges, the three of them on the top right-hand side there, are all about buildings, so commercial buildings, industrial buildings, and importantly, residential buildings. And again, we'll be hearing today about some of the initiatives that are taking place about reducing carbon emissions from residential buildings as well. I'll skip over this, but again, it's kind of headlining some of the things. Alan's talked about the net zero carbon planning document that we have, really important part. And as we develop the South Warwickshire local plan, it's going to be really important that that also addresses has climate change at its heart. And that's certainly the way that process has kicked off. We'll be hearing about tree planting. Our partners from Heart of England Forest are here today, and they'll be doing a presentation. And also really important that we think about where our energy comes from as well. So that's another thing that I'm sure we'll be talking about during the day, either in the presentations or in the networking sessions. And adaptation, something that the District Council's taking very, very seriously, and we'll be hearing from Becky as well about what we're doing around helping our organisation, but also our communities, our businesses and our environment to adapt to climate change. And I really wanted to finish with this because I think it hopefully leads into the rest of what we're going to hear. This isn't just about the council. You don't want to be hearing just the stuff that Warwick District Council's doing or even that the County Council's doing. It's about hearing from people who are involved with this from all walks of life, from householders, from businesses, from our community groups and so on. And there's so much that we can be really encouraged by, as I say, but so much more that we can build on as well. So on that note, I will hand back to you, Alan. And just a reminder about the time. I think I am on time. I am. That's great. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And we're now calling upon Jan Bernal from Kenilworth All Together, please. To move your slide, just down. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As Alan said, I'm Jan Bernal, and I'm here to tell you a bit about Kenilworth All Together Greener. Kenilworth All Together Greener started in 2014, running a few speaker meetings on green issues and different aspects of sustainability, with the idea of bringing together people with similar interests to spark some community projects. I now suspect there are more efficient methods of doing this, but we're still going. We've held about 65 speaker meetings covering a vast range of topics. Everything from how to run a disco soup event to how to build a zero carbon house, from smart meters to composting, from fashion industry waste to animal welfare, from bread making with local ingredients to woodland management. We've around 100 people in our mailing list. There's a core of regulars and a lot of other people who dip in and out depending on the topic. Alongside speaker meetings, we've tried to get a few community initiatives off the ground. Very early on, after hearing about schemes in Stratford and Earlston, we started a small harbour share scheme. We picked unwanted fruit from a local orchard and collected surplus fruit from the community, which we distributed to several local charities. This scheme suffered a setback when my friend with the orchard sold up, but some fruit and veg sharing still goes on via the Facebook page, and some apple surpluses still go to the Waverley Day Centre. Back when the Kenilworth Neighbourhood Plan was being developed, we were invited to contribute. We formed a working group with a retired planning consultant, a sustainable buildings expert, an architect and some residents, all of whom are cyclists as well as being pedestrians and drivers. We focused our efforts on pressing for policies to make the new Eastern Kenilworth developments more sustainable and more pedestrian and cycle-friendly. Although we were reasonably successful, we later realised that just having policies in place wasn't enough and that you also needed to defend them against those people involved in the planning process who didn't realise that policies existed or who didn't understand them. So our working group became the Constructive Comment Group and has gone on to contribute to consultations and comment on some of the major planning applications. On several occasions, Kenilworth All Together Greener gatherings have doubled as recruiting platforms for community initiatives. For example, we invited Andrew Milton and Alison Firth to pitch to us when they wanted volunteers to set up the refill scheme and plastic-free Kenilworth, respectively. Then, after the Town Council had declared climate emergency, John Deering came to talk to us about the Climate Emergency Working Group, what the Climate Emergency Working Group might be able to do, and recruited 2 of us to join him in that. Now, for years, I thought that Kenilworth really ought to have a repair cafe and kept mentioning the idea to people. It's a bit like a broken record, I think, but anyway. But although I could find would-be repairers, I couldn't find anyone who was up for taking the lead and making it happen. After the Leamington Repair Cafe opened, I invited Judy Steele to come and talk to us at KATG about how it works, what it involves, and what help is available to call on. Her talk generated lots of interest, but sadly it still didn't reveal anyone who was game for leading a Kenilworth venture. However, I'd taken notes and I compiled a basic how-to-do-it guide in case that might be useful. And indeed, a few months later, when someone else mentioned repair cafes at a meeting, I circulated my guide to everybody at the meeting so that they knew what was meant and what was involved. And very fortuitously, Sharon Maxted read her husband's copy and then contacted me to say she wanted the job. And funnily enough, at the same time, I heard somebody called Elaine had started a conversation about repair cafes on the Nextdoor social media platform. So when I heard, I tracked her down and put her in touch with Sharon. Together, they pulled in loads of help from the Lions and elsewhere and went full steam ahead for an April opening. But then COVID hit and delayed the launch by more than a year. But I am, though, now delighted to say that Kenilworth has a thriving repair cafe. A few months ago, a KATG member sent me an email. It said, "Hi, Jan. Is anybody in Kenilworth looking at car clubs? My own vehicle is approaching the end, but I'm now working from home and really don't need a car on a full-time basis. The close where I live has 33 houses, and between us, 40 to 50 cars, many of them parked up 95% of the time. So I've started looking at alternatives. Is this something KATG could investigate?" Well, was it? I put out a call for anyone interested and got about 10 responses. So we started by sharing information and anecdotal experiences of existing car clubs and comparing the pros and cons of the different business models being used. We were aware that the Harbury e-car club had found the number of actual users was far fewer than predicted, and they'd had to adapt their model. We noted that clubs like the Hookie Car Club in Hook Norton and the Malvern Hills Community Car Club own and maintain their own vehicles and rely on lots and lots of volunteer hours. This was a worry because none of us had any of that kind of free time. However, we were also not keen on the schemes offered by the commercial operators like Enterprise or Zipcars because their business models involved putting more cars on the road. And besides needing somewhere to station the vehicles, we suspected that they might also want some support from local authority or somewhere else to cover their financial risk. I think I'm one behind. Oops. Yeah. Fortunately, Andrew Milton's sister introduced him to the car sharing platform, and the people at Hirecar then introduced Andrew to Emily Kerr, this lady depicted here, in Oxford, whose car club had just been featured in the Sunday Times. Emily used Hirecar's closed-loop function to set up a very local club covering 6 streets and involving 20 people and 7 cars, which was proved so successful that it's been copied in 8 other areas of Oxford. Those are the dark grey blotches on the map. Emily soon sold her car and set up a campaigning website called shareourcars.com, which provides lots of information about this kind of car sharing setup. So Hirecar became the favourite business model for several reasons. Its off-the-shelf peer-to-peer renting model is up and running, tried and tested. There would be no financial commitment involved, and the only risk to us might be the embarrassment if we don't manage to sign up enough car owners and drivers to make it attractive. Importantly for us too, the scheme uses existing car stock, so could reduce the number of vehicles on our streets really right from the start. So how does the Kenilworth Community Car Club work? Membership is limited to Kenilworth residents only, so all cars and borrowers are conveniently close to each other. Members are people who have a car they're willing to lend for a modest fee, and people who are happy to pay a fair price when they need to borrow one. Hire Car's digital platform provides the necessary booking, payment and insurance services, and the closed loop function ensures that the club members' cars are only seen by other club members. Joining is easy. Once you've signed up to Hire Car itself, you just email our club with your name and address, and ask to join. The membership secretary gets Hire Car to add you to the club's closed loop. The club is only a month or so old, so we are still very much in the startup phase with lots more work to do to recruit members. But so far we've made a promising start. And this more or less brings you up to date with Kenilworth All Together Greener, except that is for the RSA-sponsored Low Carbon Warwickshire Network event we organised and hosted in October. However, Bob Sherman is here to talk about the Low Carbon Warwickshire Network, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. We now have Alice Ellis from Warwick District Council, who's going to talk to us about Green Homes grants. Alice.
Excuse me, is there a microphone at all?
This is the microphone.
I don't know if people are... It's not working. It's hard to hear all that. I don't know if it can be repositioned or turned up a bit, or you can come close to it. It's not as high as volume, if you want to lean down.
Okay.
Just about talking.
Press that down. Okay.
How's that? Oh, too loud. Perfect. Okay, there's a bit of an echo actually. Is that normal? Okay. So I'm Alice. I'm the Sustainability, Energy and Engagement Officer at Warwick District Council, and I'm here to talk about the Green Homes Grant Scheme. So, so the scheme is funded through Business Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS for short, and supported through the brilliant Midlands Net Zero Hub organisation. And we've obtained £7 million of funding for 3 phases of the scheme to improve the energy efficiency of low-income homes, and also to target the lowest performing energy performance certificate rated homes also. And as Dave mentioned earlier, 22% of our emissions come from homes, and also to mention that this overlaps with the fuel poverty agenda, where a significant number of properties are in fuel poverty, or households, I should say. So just to give an idea of the scheme overview, I won't be able to cover all the detail of this, but the schemes have all been supported by E.ON Energy Services, who have been absolutely brilliant, along with Acton Energy, who I believe are here today to provide further information on the scheme. And we've largely focused on social properties, including some private properties as well, to install air source heat pumps, solar PV and loft insulation. So between the first 2 phases, around 80 properties have been improved. So partners and officers involved. There's 2 really main points I want to make about this. The first is that just one scheme, one carbon reduction scheme within Warwick District, this is the extent to which the number of partners that have been involved and council staff, and it's quite substantial. So as I mentioned, E.ON and Acton Energy have been our main partners. But also I want to do a shout out for a colleague who couldn't make it today, Tom Murphy, who's our building surveyor in the fire and climate change team, who has worked very hard in liaising with tenants and all of the Warwick District Council partners, Terza, Shield, Dodds and D&K, to make this scheme be really successful. In terms of a heat pump and how it works, basically it's taking heat from the air to produce hot water and heating. So that kind of gives an overview of that. It's a complicated piece of equipment, and I think if I was to just explain it briefly, it wouldn't really do it justice. But what we've actually now got, and this is the picture on the right-hand side. This is really exciting because it's a real-life picture from Warwick District Council with heat pumps on our properties. So there's a terrace of bungalows there with 3 heat pumps installed, working closely with the tenants there. They're actually really pleased with the work that's happened. We've had great feedback from the way the installers have worked. We've had feedback actually just this week to say that, using their smart meters, they're saving a third. I mean, it's still early days, a third on their energy bills, which is encouraging. But I think we need to do more. We're still in the pilot phase of this, and as I say, the heat pumps have only recently been installed. So, in terms of looking at the lessons learned, I think the key point is really fabric-first approach. The way the scheme works, retrofit assessments are really important, but what we found was that they picked up that we could have a heat pump installed, but not necessarily that things like doors, windows need to be improved, insulation measures need to be in place. These are all really, really important things, particularly for renewables technologies like heat pumps. Solar PV is slightly different. That's a much more simple and easier quick win measure to do. Conscious of time, I'm not sure how much longer I've got left. Okay, thanks. So we're also looking to do some solar PV on some other properties, on the air source heat pump properties, through the phase 3 of the scheme as well, to help residents reduce their bills further. So moving on to phase 3, this is aimed at private sector owner-occupier houses, which includes tenants as well, and also some additional social properties. We've had 2 successful bids from Bays for 5.6 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but that actually only equates to around 700 measures. So what's on offer? £10,000 of grant funding for solar PV, the heat pumps I've mentioned, loft and cavity wall, external wall insulation, smart heating controls. There's also some underfloor heating and windows for the private rented properties as well. And this is all free, completely free for residents, so we're really keen to spread the word. For private rented properties, landlords are required to make a contribution of £5,000, and tenants apply through the scheme. I'll come on to how to apply, and they're required to get permission from the landlord. And again, E.ON are the main installer, and they're subcontractors working with us on the scheme. And the picture on the right is a solar PV installed, we've had installed under the scheme. We've had 4 solar PV installs happen just this week. So it's starting to happen. So how to apply? You must own and live in your own home or privately rent within the district and have a gross household income of less than £31,000 a year, or someone in the home receives means-tested benefits. And again, these are criteria set by Bays, and we are lobbying Bays to increase the income threshold to enable more households to take part. You must also have an energy performance certificate rating of the property of D to G, which is the lowest performance rated. So we're working with Act on Energy. You can call them. They're here today. And there's also an online expression of interest form as well, where we'd encourage residents to apply through that, which is the easiest way. So what if you fall outside of the criteria? Well, Act on Energy have actually got a huge amount of experience and information. They've got links to installers who are trusted and reputable. So you can contact them and get some quotes. And we're also additionally looking at a scheme to launch supporting residents through the whole process. Because what we're realising is that people want to do this. They may be able to pay for it, but they're not quite sure where to start. So they want to improve their home, they want to make it more efficient. Where do they go? Who do they speak to? How do they get a retrofit assessment? So we're hoping to work and get a scheme launched soon that would enable that hand-holding and support going forwards. And that's be done. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Helen. Right, I now call upon Steve Smith from Warwickshire County Council.
Thank you. You're using up valuable time in my 10 minutes. I'm going to have nightmares about the Dave Barber buzzer. Can everybody hear me okay? I might have to... Is that all right? I'm a bit tall, taller than you, Alice. Thank you. Where are we? I'm so used to when you're on Zoom saying, next slide, please, and I'm in charge today. Yeah, Steve Smith. Oh, hello, Gian. I'm a director at Warwickshire County Council. I've got quite a few responsibilities, but one of those for my sins is to be the lead for climate change across the county. In 10 minutes or 9 minutes and 30 seconds, I'm not going to really be able to go into huge detail about the whole range of things that the County Council is doing, but that banner at the top, the blue and green banner you see at the top of that slide, if you go on the Warwickshire County Council website, you'll see that banner. Click on there, there's loads in there that go into much more detail, and you're obviously welcome to have a look at that further. I'm just going to cover very briefly, and then I want to get on to some more community-focused matters, but the County Council, similar to what Alan described in terms of the commitments that the District Council have made, the County Council have similarly, through their corporate plan on the left there, similarly made commitments to put tackling the climate crisis, delivering a sustainable future across Warwickshire at the heart of what we do. The same with biodiversity. Warwickshire County Council has a lot of activity and responsibilities with regards to biodiversity, as well as climate change adaptation that we're already seeing. And as I say, if you go into our website, you can go through our corporate plan at your leisure. The numbers, again, there's a lot of data that we can all look at, but Warwickshire, it's the pie on the right-hand side. Our figures, 5,113 kilotons, or 5.1 million tonnes across Warwickshire. The darker green, 44%, is the majority in transport, as has been said. Warwickshire County Council's emissions, which is on the left there, the three scopes, I suppose, is 1/650th of the total, if you like. But public sector as a whole is just 2% of the whole emissions in a geography like Warwickshire. So our emissions, yes, are a small part, but our influence is much greater and significant. And therefore, why wouldn't we put it at the heart of what we do? We feel really passionate. Actually, Alan used that word, passion, when we saw the video. I felt emotion. Actually, I could feel it. I've seen that video a number of times. The emotion that it stirs up, that we must be doing something about this, is true. We've got a number of ambitions. I won't dwell on these. As I say, they're in the corporate plan, but we've needed to break down the challenge for Warwickshire County Council into 6 particular themes, as you can see there in dark green, because we are a transport and a highways authority. Education is huge in Warwickshire County Council, as is social care. Economic stimulus in the county is also a big focus for us about how we support the local economy. We want to make sure that no area is left outside of our ambitions here. As I say, there's quite a lot in our Sustainable Future strategy that we're trying to do. We talk about things that we've done so far. We talk about things where we need to do much more, invest much more in EV charging, much more in different forms of sustainable travel. We need to do more in supporting a green and more circular economy, an economy that thinks about reuse and recycling and tries to minimise waste. Lots to do in these areas. I'm going to be ahead of my 10 minutes, Dave. I'm assuring myself. So the County Council's Cabinet had signed off and endorsed our new strategy on the 13th of October. Now we're going to go out to a much wider consultation, say, look, we didn't want to put a blank sheet of paper. What we wanted to do was to put where we were at so far and the things that we'd like to do. But we want to do a large public engagement on that, to refine it, to listen to views, to modify if we need to. So that's going to start very soon. I say mid-November there. But particularly, we're going to have some much more focused conversations with groups, with people who want to be engaged in this yet further in February. It gives us time to work through the online engagement that we want to do. So if anybody here is interested in being part of any more focused discussions with the County Council on our strategy and on those 6 different themes, then if you just give a name and a contact, preferably an email, to the guys who are at our stall in the refreshments room, then we'll collect those together and contact you nearer the time. But what we're looking to do is to adopt our strategy at the time when we are just after County Council's looking at its budget setting in spring. So look out for that if that's of interest to you. And surveys will be via that link. And again, it's all going to be on our county website, as you'll find. I'll dwell on biodiversity particularly. Very early on in our commitment, the County Council had ambitions, as it controls a significant amount of green space, both in our farm holdings. I think Warwickshire's got about 5,000 acres of farms as community farms, and we're a landlord for a significant amount of farming, that wanted to try and connect its green spaces and green corridors. Some of them are very small. I was interested to talk to a lady, I can't find her now, there she is over there, and we were talking about Foundry Wood, I think it was there, and there's lots of green spaces that I'm certainly not going to be aware of, and we're trying to think about how we might connect green spaces across the whole of Warwickshire in particular. But how do we support that with further tree planting, particularly pledge of 1 tree for every resident there? We have a scheme when we start to look at the gain from development, working with Dave and colleagues in the district council here, the gain that we get from development, how can that be invested in biodiversity, enhancing the natural environment? And we'd want to do that with all the boroughs and district councils across Warwickshire too. Developers would want to offset their emissions through more investment in this way. So it's a way of gaining funding that we can put back into climate change initiatives as well. It's quite a circular flow of money, which we're really keen to keep going. This has been nationally recognised, and we're now starting to see other counties and other planning authorities starting to roll out something similar. I'm almost finished, you'll be glad to hear. And with a real community focus, we'd set up our climate change community fund, Green Shoots. Maybe a number of you here have heard of that. And we completed our first round some months ago, actually, probably even towards the back end of last year. And these are the results of that. We put £1 million aside. We've been able to fund 69 projects in the first round, 69 applications, all sorts of projects, some quite modest, a few £100, £500, up to a maximum of 25,000. And it's, again, part of our initiative is to enable that we can spread the engagement to allow communities access to funding, quite modest at times, to be able to do things very locally, do things that they already have the energy and the participation to do. They just need some financial support. And that's what we enable to do in the first round. Out of that $1 million, of course, spending 625 left a residual amount. No, wrong way. First one to do that. There's a residual amount which I'll come on to. I've just got a few examples, which I won't read verbatim to you, but just to give some examples of the type of projects that we've supported through Green Shoots. we had quite a lot of applications concerning the topic of biodiversity. Lots of community groups, whether they are properly and formally constituted or just a group of people who have the same view and want to do something locally, wanting to rewild or replant, whatever it is, it was a significant theme to those applications, and we were very keen to support some. Building decarbonisation, I mean, I'm a property person by background. This is probably one of the most difficult areas for local authorities to decarbonise its estate. Warwickshire's got 500 buildings. Oh, I'm getting the wave. 1 minute, a 1 minute wave. Oh, crikey. What's your language? We're on YouTube, aren't we? So yes, so decarbonisation, carbonising buildings, village halls, churches, another interesting part of what we wanted to support, as is waste reduction. And I think, Repair Cafe Kenilworth, I was beaten to it. Obviously another area that was, we were very keen to support and see more initiatives roll out of that nature. And the same with green transport. And more there, Warwickshire Cycle Buddies. Sorry, colleagues, they're in the what they have a stand in one of those rooms at the bottom of the building there. So finally, yeah, Green Shoots Phase 2. We're just assessing the applications. You can clearly see from the green circles there's a lot of interest and there's not enough money. I'll be lobbying to try and put more money in there from a 350k budget when actually there's interest for 1.7 million. So we're obviously going to be disappointing a whole host of people there that we just can't fund. I'll be lobbying to see how we can put more money into Green Shoots. I've already been asked, is there going to be a Green Shoots 3? Not yet, but I'm hopeful. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Steve. I now call upon Chloe and Lindsay. At the bottom island.
I think, which one?
The bottom one.
No.
That one there.
Thank you. I'm hoping everyone can hear me if I'm speaking like this. Is that all right? Yeah, super, okay. So, good morning. It's really lovely to be here. I'm really excited to meet with people and hear more about what everyone's doing today. We're here to present the Trees Call to Action project. So what we are doing is we're a partnership project and we are run through a number of different members here. So the Heart of England Forest is one, which you may have heard of. Obviously, I'm expecting that everyone here has heard of Warwick District Council. We're also working with Wychavon District Council and Stratford District Council too. The project is funded by a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and we're delivered by staff from the 4 partner organisations that I've just mentioned there. So our goal overall is enabling people to plant more trees across those areas. Yeah, it works. So the Trees Call to Action project is helping to plant woodland across your local area. If you're interested in planting and caring for trees, so we're looking at planting, but we're also looking not just at putting trees in the ground, but how we can go beyond that, care for them longer term, and keep things alive, keep things healthy, and also teach people skills. So beyond planting and caring for trees, we want to hear from you. You can join with volunteering opportunities if you don't have land, and we can also offer one-to-one support, knowledge, and expertise, and that can help you if you do have land to design some tree planting. So we're very aware people have different opportunities, different availabilities, and we want to work with everybody to get people engaged. So why plant trees? I hope that there is a bit of awareness in the room here about this one, but obviously that there is an ability to increase the level of biodiversity we've got. So we can take areas that maybe have opportunity there. We can look at planting. We can get more space for invertebrates, more species on the land. Also, by planting, we're going to increase the ability for pollinators to survive and thrive. That, in turn, can help farmlands, orchards, local people. And obviously, trees are able to lock up carbon. So by planting, we're going to be enabling those trees to take carbon out of the atmosphere, lock it up into the building blocks of each tree, and increasingly over, hopefully, centuries, keep doing that. Whilst they're doing that, they're also going to be cleaning our air, cleaning our water, reducing runoff, and all of these things are going to enable people to have safer, more recreational places to attend, whilst also, interestingly at the moment,
we can capitalise on that ability for people to create income from planting, which is quite a rare and unique opportunity. So part of our project is really how to help people access funds to do this themselves. Finally, if you're a farmer or if you know any farmers, they'll really appreciate the fact that there is ability with trees on their land to protect their livestock, both in hot conditions, but also keeping their livestock out for longer. When it is cold, when it is snowing, trees can provide that shelter as well. So I'm just going to move myself a little bit. For national policy, we've got a variety of different things that have come out quite recently. I'm not going to go thoroughly into them, but the idea is this is the building that momentum that projects like this have. We are quite a new project, only starting up a couple of months ago. So what I'd like to emphasise is that we've come through some of these steps previously, showing that our environment is not resilient enough, that there is a 25-year plan in place that is going to focus on creating new habitats. And overall, through the Trees Action Plan that's been quite recent, we are now able to access funding for projects like ours that will help engage with people, hopefully like yourselves, or people that you might know. So we're looking to help with those England Trees Action Plan targets to treble tree planting rates, looking to plant up 30,000 hectares a year, not just our project, that's the overall plan, but also to expand and connect woodlands with people and encourage people to have those skills. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lindsay, who's going to speak a bit more about what we can enable you to do. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lindsay McGurk. I am the Project Delivery Officer for the Stratford District. I then also have two colleagues who are responsible for Wychavon and Warwick District Councils. So we are a new project, as Chloe said, and we are all about engaging communities to enable them to plant more trees, not just planting trees, getting trees in the ground, but the right trees in the right area, and also for caring and maintenance of the trees afterwards. As you know, we had a very dry summer this year. If we do have another dry summer next year and we've got trees in the ground, we want people to know how they can care for those trees. Not just by watering, but perhaps by mulching around the bottom of the trees and to try and lock in as much moisture as we can. So we'll be going around to parish council meetings, hopefully. We're going to try and engage in all 205 parish councils across the 3 districts. We're going to be getting involved with community projects and just talking to as many people as we can, really, seeing what land there is out there that we can get more trees. We will be also consulting on the various grant options available. So the Trees Call to Action project doesn't actually have a pot of money, but what we are is we're an enabler. So we have looked at the various grants available across the UK. So there are some smaller grants available, like Free Trees through the Woodland Trust, which would be for community projects and schools. And then there are the larger applications for farmers and large landowners, which are like the UCO applications through the government. We'll also be hosting lots of volunteer events, either on the Heart of England forest land or on community-based land, and offering ways of communities to learn new skills in planting and caring for trees, and basically making it as simple as possible so as many people can get involved. It's also not just trees. It can be orchards, hedgerows. It can be as small or as large as you want. The main thing is we want as many trees spread across the area as we can to try and reduce the fragmentation of the habitats that we currently have. So the way that you can help us is to help to look for areas of land that we can plant on. Like I said, we've got small scale and large scale planting. So the small scale is community sites, school grounds, small holdings, orchards, hedgerows. Farmers may want to plant just a few trees in a corner of land that is out of use or not very productive for them, or they might want to try and plant a hedgerow along a gappy hedge that they already have. Or if it's a larger scale, there may be some farmers who are really interested in planting large areas of woodland for biodiversity, or they may want it for future timber use. It can be for whatever reason they want, really. So there's lots of small spaces scattered around a lot of the parish councils and communities. There's lots of little edges and unused areas where we could get trees, especially orchards, because I think that's a really nice thing to plant for communities, because it provides food for the community. People can get involved, they can look after the trees, and then they can literally reap the benefits of what they've sown. And it's all about planting the right tree in the right place. It's not just about putting a tree somewhere and leaving it. As Chloe said, it can be for various reasons. One of them is flood defence. Okay, so we basically are targeting individuals, so family and friends. So we have a lot of people that support the Heart of England Forest as friends of the forest, and a lot of people come to the sites and enjoy the forest or get involved in more community-based activities, walks and things. So we'll be sort of getting those individuals involved, and then also individuals across the parish councils, groups, so like I said, schools, but also things like scouts and guides, other clubs. It could be, you know, rugby clubs or cricket clubs where there's a bit of land where the children could learn how to plant trees. Corporate days, so team building days, where you've got a social responsibility. There are a lot of corporations that want to help reduce carbon emissions, and schools. A lot of schools have lots of area out that they can plant on, and I know forest schools are becoming quite a big thing now. So what we can offer is support and advice for tree planting. So we are looking at the Forestry Commission, who have the larger grants for the larger scale projects. Woodland Trust have the Free Trees scheme and a carbon credit scheme. The TCV also give out free trees. District councils are supporting us through the TCAP project for the tree planting schemes. And also the Heart of England Forest, we have a lot of experts on site who can advise and offer training and demonstrations on site for your tree planting needs. So this is our team. It's me on the left, Chloe, she's the TCAP manager. There's Craig, he manages Wychavon, and then Amy, who is the Warwick. So if you're in this area, Amy would be the one to email, but equally you can reach out to any of us. There's a lot of information about our project on the Heart of England Forest website as well. So if you're interested in finding out more about this project, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. We're a brand new project, and we just want to encourage as many people as possible to plant and care for trees. Thank you.
Well done. Right, time's not on our side, so we're off again. And next to speaking is Bob Sherman from Harbury. Bob.
Good morning. One of the things that we heard this morning is that if you can do something about it, then do it. And that's what we've been doing and what we continue to do. And it's all about what we are about is doing it. Don't wait, don't talk about it, do it. So I am going to talk about the Low Carbon Warwickshire Network quite a bit at the end, but I have to tell you the story of how it came about first. So it all starts with the Harbury Energy Initiative. Harbury is a village that some of you may know very well. It's not far from here. And we started in 2010 a village group devoted to low carbon measures. And we were doing about one project a year, and they were practical projects. And I'll show you some of them in a minute. And out of it came 2 further initiatives, but actually there's 3 initiatives really, but I'll tell you about them as well. So these were some of the things that we did. The first thing we did was we got a nice fat grant from the LEAF Fund. I don't know if any of you remember that, the dreaded Green Deal, which didn't work too well, but we got quite a lot of money out of it, and that enabled us to put internal wall insulation into our community library. We did energy options reports on all the community buildings that we could, and we held a couple of engagement events, awareness raising, and you can see quite well attended. And a few more things. We started a car club. There is some confusion about this because out of the car club, down at the bottom right there, you can see Harbury E-Wheels, came Harbury E-Wheels, which is now completely separate. The car club lasted 4.5 years until a major corporate bought the startup which we'd been working with, and that was the end of our car club. But we were determined that Harbury eWheels, which is a social transport scheme using 2 electric cars, which is completely free to use, we take people referred to us to wherever they need to go. And you will see on the right there is a little picture of the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. I'm wearing proudly the badge, which we have just been given this year. We also put solar panels on the school using Salix funding, and the next project after the very first one we did was the one in the middle, the rugby scrum you can see there. We insulated the rugby clubhouse, so that was the roof and the walls, and then we got a 19 kilowatt energy store battery for the village hall, who already had solar panels on the roof, so they were saving even more of their energy. So, yes, so this is the latest initiative we're working on. We like to get ambitious, and boy, is this ambitious, for us anyway, because we're just a village. We want to put an EV charging station into our village behind the village hall. We've been very fortunate in getting successful funding from the Rural Community Energy Fund for stage 1 and stage 2. So not only did we do a feasibility study, we are actually now business ready, and we have planning consent. What we don't have is any capital to actually put it in, and that's what we're working hard on now. The point behind it initially was to support Harbury eWheels, so we would have an income stream. Whether that happens or not is another matter. I really hope so, but that is the plan. But we also obviously wanted to provide a community resource, because one of the things you see on the right there at the bottom, the Rural Charging Equity Project, the Energy Saving Trust did a report showing just how disadvantaged rural communities were with the EV infrastructure rollout. They're not top of the list for obvious reasons. So we thought, as the way we always do it, well, okay, we'll do it ourselves. One of the key things about this is that it will be part powered by small renewable installations, so some PV and a rather unusual vertical axis wind turbine. But it all depends on getting the money, obviously. So, out of Harbury Energy Initiative have come many, as you can see, different projects and schemes, and this is one that we started in 2019 with a meeting in Harbury Village Hall, and the purpose behind it, we thought, okay, well, we've done all this stuff, and we can only think of one other community in Warwickshire, and that's at Snitterfield, that's actually very active and busy on this agenda. So maybe what we need to do is to generate more activity, stimulate more activity, make things happen, and support communities to start their own small groups, share ideas, benefit from each other's experience. And so we held this meeting just to see what would happen, and lo and behold, we now have, it says 26 groups, we actually got 27 now, and it says we've got over 100 on the mailing list. It's actually now 114. So it's growing all the time. And the way what I'll do is I'll show you a slide in a minute showing how it works. But as you can see, the key aim is to increase positive and practical climate action by communities and individuals in their communities. So how does it work? Okay, well, we run local group events. And Jan Burnell referred to the last one that we held, which was in Kenilworth, which was a brilliant success. We had, I can't remember how many, nearly 60 people, was it? Came to that. And there was a really good breakout sessions at the end. And what we do is either we get them to work out what their priorities are for their own community, or as they did at Kenilworth, we have a sort of pledging system. So some notices were put out at the back, and you said, okay, after this, I'm going to go and do that. And I put one of those up, and I've done it. So that was a really good way to get things to happen. But it is definitely about practical activities. There are people who are far better than us at policy stuff and lobbying and all of that. We don't want to do any of that. That's already happening. We want things to happen. Action on the ground. And those events are kind of the key part of how it works. One of the things that we are now looking at, and we're right at the beginning of, is working with schools, which is quite a difficult thing to do. And there are all sorts of strands that are suddenly coming together that make me think that this would be a good project to see if our local communities are interested in doing it, because it will definitely rely on them doing some of the footwork. We can't do it. That there is a steering group that runs all this, but we don't want it to be about the steering group. We want it to be about the groups. We see our role as helping them and encouraging them and supporting them. And we are very fortunate in having the support of the RSA, which is an organisation probably many of you have never heard of. It came into being during the Enlightenment, and it's all about social change, and it's full of incredibly clever people who are way above my head. I don't understand what they're talking about half the time. But they're talking about a future worth living in, basically, is what they're up to now. And part of the way they work is what we have aspired to follow, which is deliberative democracy, i.e. communities deciding for themselves what they want to do and get on with doing it, rather than being told from the top, this is what you must do. How do we share our information? Well, we do it in two ways. We have a very good monthly newsletter, which we ask groups to contribute to. Jackie Lawrence, who is probably well known to most of the council people here, retired and is now part of the steering group. So she produces this every month, and we send it round to anybody who's on our mailing list. If you want to join our mailing list, if you want to be part of what we're doing, please go along to our stall, which is down the end of the corridor there, and sign up. You won't be asked to do anything necessarily, but it will mean you'll get that newsletter and you will get some of the other communications that we send out. The other way we communicate with people is through Facebook. We have two sites, one public, one private. It says there, I think, 44 members. It's more than that now. So that's just beginning to grow, and we're fortunate in having an apprentice, a trainee from Octopus Energy attached to us at the moment, Emma Powell, who is doing all that for us, because really social media is definitely not my thing. So if you want to help us make it bigger and better, please come and join the Low Carbon Warwickshire Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. We now have Tass Smith and Gary Stocker.
Yeah, so now we're going to hear from two of our South Warwickshire climate champions. So what are South Warwickshire climate champions? I hear you all say silently to yourselves. So we launched South Warwickshire Climate Champions earlier this year. It's an initiative that is designed to showcase and champion the individuals in South Warwickshire that are showing leadership in their local communities or in their workplace to make a big difference to their climate impact. Much like the aims and objectives of this event itself, it's hoped that by featuring these stories, by sharing them and getting them out there, then we can inspire others to do the same. So without further ado, we are going to hear from Tass first and some of the great initiatives that she's been championing in her community. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Right then. No script, so I'm going to have to work from the slides. So I'm Tass, and I live in Hampton Lucy, which is in the Stratford district area. So my inspiration for local action was that in December 2019, I went to the Centre for Alternative Technology, which is in Mid Wales. If you've never come across it, look them up, go and visit. It's just the most amazing place. And they ran a course, which they're still running now, which is their Zero Carbon Britain, where they talk about the science, they bring it all alive, lots of breakout sessions, but really the call to action there was that however brilliant you are as individuals, you need to get out there in your communities and do something together, and it will be just so much better. So that was very inspiring, and it was the last one that they did in person before COVID hit, so it was very powerful. Other inspiration for me is Rob Hopkins, who started the Transition Town Topness, I think was the first one, Transition Movement. Read his books, they are really, they are real calls to action. What is to what if is just brilliant. So I did that in 2019, came away from it really fired up. Then I got a bit busy, then COVID came. But throughout 2020, I got a bit despondent about it all and just thought, what can I do on my own? And then I went back to my inspiration. I thought, look, I'll just put a thing in our local parish magazine. Is there anybody else out there who cares like I care? Come forward if you want to. And I was amazed that some people got in touch with me, which then got me a bit worried because I thought, oh gosh, I need to do something now. So I Googled around, I found Bob Sherman. Thank you, Bob, he's been brilliant. And Jackie Lawrence as well. They came along to our first Zoom meeting and we've joined the Low Carbon Warwickshire Network, and all together, fantastic. Lots of support there. So we had our Zoom meeting and I thought, right, okay, so we need to have a committee, we need to get a constitution. I have never seen people disappear so fast. Suddenly everybody was really, really busy. They had no time whatsoever. And I thought, oh, well, that's a rubbish idea. Then let's forget that. We won't have a constitution, we won't have a committee. We'll just be a group of people who are interested in this stuff and what can we achieve together. And they all came back, which was really, really reassuring. So we needed a name. So I understand branding is important. So we pinched it from NEAT, which is Napton Environmental Action Team. We are Grapevine Environmental Action Team. So Grapevine is the parish newsletter that covers our 3 parishes. It took me about 3 hours to find a Gmail account that worked, so that was worth doing. And we don't have a website, but we use a tool called Trello, which is available. It's free, and so we've got a Trello board that's publicly available if you want to read a little bit more about us. So it started off with 1 of us, then it became 6. I'm not very good at maths, but hopefully that adds up to 13 people, and hopefully there will get a few more. I haven't got anyone from Chalkit yet, but they've started a little wildlife group, and I'm meeting them on Monday, so hopefully they'll come in with us too. The main thing that we've done, there is a little bit more, but I've written a lot of, mainly me, I've written a lot of Grapevine articles, so I'm quite an introverted person, so standing up here is absolutely terrifying. But I'm good at writing copy, so there's lots and lots of copy, which I'm happy to share with any other groups who want to do this stuff. But really it's changed. It means that in our parish newsletter, there is something about great, and there's something about community action, biodiversity, climate emergency. There's something in there every month, so you can't get away from it now. It's not like just a cosy little parish newsletter anymore. We have been an influencer in the community. We've got Hampton Lucy Parish Council have actually now started to ask us to kickstart initiatives within our community, and Loxley ditto. So what have we achieved so far? Between Loxley and Hampton Lucy, we've planted 500 saplings, and I would say most of them are still alive, so we were watering through the really hot weather. Hampton Lucy Parish Council have donated money to us, and they've said we can get more money from them if we just ask them for stuff. And with help from Bob as well, and Harbury, Hampton Lucy have now formally acknowledged that we have a climate emergency, so we are going to be holding them to that acknowledgement. We've started a children's wild allotment behind our school, which we hope to make an area where the kids can come and sort of spend a bit of time in nature and learn about what's going on. We're having a little bit of fun with the county council, so I might be talking to you a little bit later. Because we've got to do a risk assessment, we've got to get some insurance, we've got to get some fencing and all the rest of it. It's all good stuff. So what's next? We need to grow bigger. There's only 13 of us across the 3 parishes. I think part of it is to put in some regular meetings. So because we don't have a committee, we need to keep that sort of momentum going. We've been asked by the parish council to lead on a wildflower planting initiative, so I need to get that organised somehow. Complete the children's wildlife allotments. Somebody else has come forward, they want to start a community allotment, which I think is a great idea. More articles, especially I don't know what that one was going to be. Forget that. Some hedgehog highways. So I love hedgehogs, but we don't have enough of them. I'm going to rip off an idea that Felixstowe have done. I'm not going to explain it, but look it up. A community nature reserve. I'd love it if there was more sharing of skills and equipment and ideas. We want to Loxley Parish Council to acknowledge a climate emergency, and then we're going to help the parish councils to honour their climate acknowledgements. And that's the end.
Well done. Right, next we have Graham Folkes-Skinner, who's going to talk about sustainable Oh, right, okay. You've got minus 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks. How do you do this? It's
Sorry, the down out, that makes it go forward.
that makes it go forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. I see. Okay, yeah. Well, in the surprise, are they? Yeah. Okay, morning everybody. Glad to see so many people are here. Right, well, I've been interested in the environment for almost as long as I can remember. I mean, I've got my love of the countryside from my parents, two of my grandparents, they're both from rural areas. National and Junior School, I mean, headmistress there, she, was very much into that. So growing up as a family, we got involved with a few environmental activities that went on locally. Anyway, in about 1986, someone gave me this book. Not that book. That book. This particular edition was published in 1984. It's a science fiction novel which is based on current scientific knowledge, or at least what was around in 84, and describes what happens to the Earth over a 40-year period in the near future when next to nothing is done to protect the environment. I won't give away the plot, but it's not very cheerful, let's just say. And after reading this, I realised that protecting the environment wasn't just a desirable option, it's actually vital for humanity, to say nothing of other life forms' survival. And I think that putting messages about the environment and whatever other good cause you can think of, in popular fact-based fiction, whether it's novels, films, and pop music, is a good way of getting the message across to the general public. It gets them a bit more involved. Anyway, I graduated from Polytechnic in '91 and had more time, and there were, increasing ways of getting involved with environmental activities. So here's a couple. It's only two, don't worry, from recent times. Well, at the back of the house at home, there's a large flower bed, half of which we use to grow vegetables, which they say is good for the environment, and they sometimes grow even sometimes, And the other half, more importantly, is used to grow wildflowers. Anyway, a variety of shops sell boxes of different types of mixed wildflower seeds. This is just three. I bought those at the Brum Botanical, gardens. I've seen them in pound shop, And so basically just use these. So when it says to plant them on the back of the packet, you just dig the garden over, normally around springtime, sow the seeds and scatter, and that's just it. Just sort of basically, leave it. And for flower beds, as opposed to flower pots, use boxes like that. If you just use little packets of seeds, they don't really do much. And it's also better to sow more than one box and different varieties. And in that way, you obviously get a wider variety of flowers, which last later into the year. And the good thing is, like I say, you just sow it, and that's it. It takes care of itself after that. You could be quite lazy about it, It just becomes a bit of a Darwinian free-for-all. Anyway, additionally, at the back, front and back of the house, hang on, something happened there. Oh, never mind, you'll have to use your imagination. Might be there. I'm giving everything away, aren't I? It must have got lost somewhere. Anyway, don't worry about that. Use your imagination. At the front and back of the house, we leave a rectangle of grass, and you just leave it, uncut. You cut round it, you just leave a rectangle of grass. I think No Mow May, I think it was all started up with that. Yeah, that's right, yeah. And you just cut it flat, during the first mow of the spring, but you just leave it. It's a good way, good excuse to be lazy. And the thing about this is, when you leave the lawn like this, when you plant wildflowers at the back, you attract a lot of insect life, and by implication, bird life. The blackbirds used to love going in there after insects. Probably not much fun for the insects, but good for the ecosystem. And if the uncut lawn and the wildflowers are left over the winter, they also provide a haven for hibernating insects and other invertebrates. So, as a lot of us have said, what you do to live sustainably as an individual or as a family is absolutely brilliant. It's brilliant. But if you can encourage and help other people to, that is even better. Now, one good place to do this is at work, whether you're working full-time, volunteer work, or if you're studying. Anyway,
saw this earlier. That's just a plain old cardboard box, as you can see. No particularly remarkable. If you add that, though, it becomes that. It becomes a receptacle for, collecting recyclables. Now, every company which I've worked for since graduating has been very happy for me to, collect things for recycling. And my current employer, W&G at White University, I'm not representing them officially, by the way, they asked me to say that, are very proactive at providing, I will get this right eventually, at providing, mainstream recycling points. But they've been very good with me, setting up, recycling points for more, more offbeat things. So anyway, cut a long story short, I've got 5 of these set up around the place, and people use them. And what's more, not only are you collecting these recyclables, which would otherwise go into the mainstream waste, you're also getting people interested in the environment, and they'll come up to you and start talking to you and saying, hey, I've started doing this at home and all the rest of it, you see. So that's the thing, you see. Do this, you collect things for recycling, and you get people interested in talking about it. And what we were saying earlier about don't think about it, do it, there's an Irish proverb, you don't plough a field by turning it over in your mind, which I think is very good. Anyway, thank you for your attention. Sorry, it's a bit rushed. Thank you.
Well, thanks to both Tass and Gary for submitting their stories and for coming here to talk to us. And I'm under no illusion that we've got a whole room full of climate champions. So if you'd like to submit your story to us, then please do so. The more we feature, the more we inspire. You can grab a postcard from Warwick District Council stand with all the details. Thank you. Now then, finally, we do have Graham Folkeskinner, who's going to talk about sustainable travel. Graham.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk. Graham Folkeskinner, Sustainable Transport Officer for Warwick District Council. I've got quite a wide role, as you probably saw from the graphs at the beginning of the day. Transport is a big contributor to CO2 coming out of the district, and Warwick District were very wise in thinking that they needed a full-time person on it. Wrong way. So I've got a fairly wide role, but one thing I'm going to talk about today is active travel. I came into it with active travel thinking it was purely sort of a climate change issue. But since I've taken over, gone into the role, it is obviously a lot more than that. It can be health and well-being positive, so active travel is a way of getting around walking or cycling. Active travel is up there. This is a bit from the People's Inquiry for Climate Change, and the most important thing to that agenda was the fact that people wanted more cycle paths. So I'm pushing it an open door when it comes to active travel, especially with cycling. One of the big things I inherited within my role was there's a sustainable travel app called Better Points, and there's a short video that gives you a summary of what it's about. By all means, come at the end of the presentation. I've got some leaflets on it as well if you want to know more information. But hopefully, if I press the next slide, it will give me the video.
The Better Points platform rewards people for healthy and sustainable activities, such as walking, cycling, taking public transport, eating better, recycling, and motivates them to keep going until these new behaviours become habits. It's easy to get started. Once downloaded, users fill in a questionnaire to baseline their activity and segment them for more tailored rewards. Subsequently, short, easy in-app questions give opportunities for feedback. Users are awarded points, Better Points, for their healthy and sustainable activities. These points can be traded in for vouchers, discounts and offers, or can even be donated to charity. Rewards are tailored and include shops and services local to users, as well as household names. The app automatically tracks walking, running, cycling, car journeys and public transport, even riding an electric scooter. Other activities that you may want to encourage, such as swimming, recycling and hiring bicycles, are logged by booking online or scanning QR codes. Users receive targeted tips, reminders and encouragement, plus entries into prize draws in exchange for activity. Better Points programmes can change the behaviour of significant percentages of your target audience, whoever they are. They also generate huge amounts of invaluable data, such as on transport habits, healthy activity, CO2 offset, calories burned, and changes in behaviour over time, as well as rich personal testimonies and feedback. We give you all the support you need. We help you define your activities and eligibility criteria, geofence any routes, locations and boundaries you want to track, set rewards and prizes, and build message plans and surveys. A dedicated dashboard gives you access to configurable graphs, charts, and heat maps for monitoring, reporting, and modelling, such as in transport planning, air quality management, and public health. The more people you get involved, the better results you'll get. We can work across your departments to get the most out of your Better Points programme. We can also liaise with your communications team to help you promote your programme as well as possible across your digital, physical, and emotional channels. With Better Points, you can make behaviour change attractive, engaging, rewarding, and measurable for a healthier, happier world.
Okay, so we've been running with Better Points for about 18 months, and we've also got another year's extension on the contract. And that's the stats we've got at the moment. I mean, it's going from strength to strength. I mean, it's a real grassroots initiative, which I think is got lots of potential. I mean, it's got the climate change potential, but equally it's got the health and well-being agenda attached to it and the cost of living agenda attached to it. And it's really easy. It just sits on your phone and it sits in the background. So if you start walking and cycling, it gathers your points. And we had a couple of weeks ago, because you get entered into competitions, and we had a local resident that won the big national prize a couple of weeks ago. So I encourage you to, there's leaflets out there, I encourage you to use that app. And my ambition is that we're going to get a full-time apprentice working on this, because the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So I can only see this going from strength to strength. Another active travel, I mean, is that from the Commonwealth Games legacy, I had some money to spend on cycle parking. So my plans are to put more and more cycle parking in, working alongside the County Council. So they're the 3 new ones that have gone in fairly recently, and they're still going. And I've got a few snags with these, but I mean, they're in and operational. I was involved, albeit on a small basis, with the cycle parking around the road race at the Commonwealth Games, and we put a joint bid in for the legacy cycle stands, and myself and the county, we've got 7, so I've got 7 Sheffield cycle stands coming our way. Between us and the county, we've got sort of those locations earmarked to put those in. And I think one of the key things with active travel is working with everybody. The fact that we're a 2-tier authority, it's really important that we work with the county, and colleagues from the active travel, from the highways, is really key. I represent the District Council on the Community Rail Partnership, which works with friends of groups and the trail operators. I've got the opportunity to look at we're doing a questionnaire for rail users, and I'm going to ask the questions around how do they get to those stations, what's stopping them walking or cycling or getting a bus to that station. So active travel team, yeah, with that Better Points app, we're looking at using in schools. We're talking to Mighton School, we're talking to the Warwick School. And if you know Mighton Road, that gets really snarled up with cars. So we're going to use the Better Points to try and promote the idea that you can walk or cycle to school. I would like to get some form of cycle hire scheme into the district. I'm talking to various people, including Pashley, the company based in Stratford, about the idea of having some form of cycle hire within the area. I'd like to increase the car club presence in the district. we're a stakeholder in the Millie Holland feasibility study. As some of you may know, for years there's been talk about a cycle path across Abbey Fields, and I've committed to producing a report on the options for that between now and the end of the year. And as I say, I can't emphasize enough that we've got to work local, and I want to work with everybody over the idea of active travel. And thank you very much. So I would appreciate, actually, before I go, please come to me at the end of it all, put it on a card, because I'm really interested in your thoughts, what we can improve. Because I'm a cyclist, I cycled here today, and there's lots to do around cycling, for example. I mean, you only have to, I curse the fact that when it rains and you've got a blocked drain and you have to cycle through puddles, and it's not the best, but together we can hopefully achieve a real integrated active travel area. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. We now have David Mond from Warwick Climate Alliance, Warwickshire Climate Alliance. Press the bottom. Okay.
Which one here? This one?
The bottom one. Oh, that one.
Hi. Thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been wonderful, fantastic talks, but I want to begin by complimenting the statement, think globally, act locally. We have to act globally. I think that's what I want to say, and I don't know how we do it. It's a very difficult thing to do. But let me just begin by some questions. I hope, is that big enough? Can you see it? Yep. Yeah, who said this? Investing in new fossil fuels infrastructure is moral and economic madness. Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, and we all know who says that. But the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels. Okay, well, come on, I'll give you the answers in a minute. Second, globally, fossil fuel subsidies were $5.9 trillion, or 6.8% of global GDP in 2020, and are expected to increase to 7.4% of global GDP in 2025. The interesting thing about this figure is that it's made up of two parts. 8% of the subsidy reflects undercharging for supply costs. That's helping people reduce the cost of their energy consumption. 92% undercharging for environmental costs and foregone consumption taxes. So that means not charging fossil fuel companies and consumers for the damage they're causing. That's described here as a subsidy, right? It's a choice, it's a subsidy. So who do you think said that? Third, the international community is falling far short of the Paris goals, with no credible pathway to 1.5 degrees in place. Only an urgent, system-wide transformation can avoid climate disaster. Okay? Who said these things? Dangerous radicals? Well, the answers are Antonio Guterres, General Secretary of the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, pillar of world capitalism. Since 2020, for longer than that, it's been classifying the not charging companies for environmental damage caused by fossil fuels as a subsidy. And it's a subsidy that is being given to enable these companies to destroy the climate. It's the IMF saying this. And the third, not so surprising, the United Nations Emissions Gap Report 2022, which we already heard about earlier. So what do we conclude from this? I think this is the answer. We are the mainstream. The weird ones are the people in government who are not responding appropriately. Now, the question is, why not? Why do our national leaders fail to see this? Well, so here there's plenty of examples, right? Instead of a windfall tax on profits for the energy companies, which are raking in indescribable sums, Shell, for example, will invest them in new oil and gas exploration in order to avoid paying tax. The UK government encourages and allows this. With a windfall tax, the UK could subsidise fossil fuel costs. Well, actually, is that a good idea? I don't know. There are some very difficult decisions to make. Or it could pay to invest in renewables or to insulate homes. And the UK has completely failed to insulate homes. We're now paying an average of £300 a year more than we need to if the government had been paying to help us insulate our homes. And that's been going on for years. But why do I say this? You already know most of this, or all of it. I say it because we have a political problem. We have a problem which needs action at a global level. We need to act on the centre of power in this country. It's brilliant what all the people, all the speakers here have been describing. Local action is essential, but it's not sufficient. It's going to be working at the margins. It's going to reduce carbon a bit, but not enough. We need something really, really radical. Now, I don't say I know how to bring that about, but here's there's a very interesting analogy. We want to change the mindset of government, but we have to understand the structures that lead governments to behave in the stupid way that they're behaving. We need to keep a close eye on what they do. We need to ensure that everybody in the country is aware of the problem. And I think that the idea of information is the central theme. We've got to get information across. So there's an interesting analogy I want to describe. So don't worry about that. The diner's dilemma, right? This is something that you may all have experienced. I hope you have, because I think it's very revealing. Oops, I'm sorry. Oh, what's happened there? Have I skipped it somehow? Yeah, no, here we are. 5 colleagues. They don't necessarily like each other all that much, right? But they go to have dinner together, and to avoid having to keep track of what each person has, they agree to split the bill at the end. Now, the result is that everybody reasons as follows. If I have that extra glass of wine, the extra money that I will pay is only 1/5 of the cost of the wine, because we're splitting the bill. All 5 of us are paying for my glass of wine, so I'm only paying 1/5. So I will have that extra glass. Everybody has an extra glass, actually, and everybody has a dessert and the fanciest main course, because we're splitting the bill, because we're not paying the costs ourselves. If you're watching all this from the sidelines, if you're not involved, you know what's going to happen. But the individual diners do not, especially after they've had the first glass of wine. And if they don't like each other very much, that helps too. And in the end, this is the remarkable thing, at the end, when everybody leaves, they're all aghast at how much they have to pay, because they did not realize that everybody else was reasoning in the same way as they are. Okay, it's a very simple analogy, but it's one that actually is a good comparison. The world's nations are the diners who are not aware, who are not aware of the fact that everybody else is going to do the same. They're only aware of the fact they need to placate the voters in their own country, the commercial interests, etc., etc., etc. They're getting less information globally than they're getting locally. Okay. The international organizations, like the United Nations, they're the people who watch from the sidelines and can see what a stupid mess everybody else is making. Okay, so Warwickshire Climate Alliance wants to be the group that brings people in Warwickshire together and enables all the different local groups to put their voices together. I'm not saying we know how to do it, and we certainly don't want to lead. We want to conglomerate. We want people to come together and offer their ideas. So I've got to hurry through. So we have partner organisations who come along to our meetings if they want to, who respond to our calls for action if they're able to. And we do quite a lot of different things. We're able, for example, to bring together expertise to constructively step on Steve's toes, I hope, constructively. Yes. You know, I mean, to give our view, right? We've got a lot of expertise because we are a group that brings people together. So we're campaigning for Warwickshire County Council to divest from its fossil fuel investments. And if you're interested in joining this campaign, please go and pick up a leaflet or photograph the QR code on one of the leaflets at our stall because it gives you access to our campaign. We've got a website which lists all the local groups, and I want to put all the groups we've heard today, any that aren't on. How much time have I got? 12 seconds. 12 seconds, all right. Hustings, school art competition. We've got some beautiful pictures from the school art competition on our stand. There's a rally, one in Leamington, 12 o'clock at the bandstand in the Pump Room Gardens, one in Stratford, 1:30 in Henley Street, Stratford, on Saturday, November 12th. There we are. Online Christmas quiz. Anyway, please speak to me afterwards to become a partner in Warwickshire Climate Alliance.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I knew it would be controversial. Right, next we have Becky Davis from Warwick District Council, who's going to talk about adaptation. Becky. The bottom
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Becky Davies and I've recently started in the role of Climate Change Adaptation Officer at Warwick District Council. And I'm here to talk about climate change adaptation and the work that the council is starting to do on adaptation. Okay, so why do we need to adapt to climate change? Well, regardless of our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and achieve net zero ambitions, we're still going to see our climate change due to irreversible changes that are already locked in. The implications of this will include more intense heat waves, more frequent and severe flooding, longer drier spells and more extreme weather. And the summer that we experienced this year is likely to become a normal summer for us in the future. These changes will obviously have impacts on people, services, infrastructure, businesses and our natural environment. We're not immune to this in Warwickshire and we're already experiencing some of these impacts. Just to give a few examples of the issues that we as a council experienced this summer. So we had damage to trees due to branch drop and early leaf fall, which obviously leaves the trees then more susceptible to pests and diseases. We had loss of very young trees due to the drought conditions, loss of biodiversity and habitats. Some of the lakes dried up, which impacted on invertebrates and fish and other wildlife. We had increased risk of wildfire, which thankfully didn't come to anything in the district, but measures were needed in order to reduce that risk. We had other things like increased antisocial behaviour in our parks and open spaces, cases of potentially dangerous open water swimming, particularly young people. One particular area of concern was St Nicholas Park, where the young people were jumping off the bridges into the river just to seek the coolness of the water to try and cool down. There was the potential for elderly residents in our sheltered accommodation schemes to overheat, amongst lots of other things. So we're already feeling the impacts. To help reduce our vulnerability to climate change, we obviously need to adapt. And the extent to which we need to adapt will depend on our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions globally. And the slower that we mitigate climate change, the harder and more costly it will be to adapt. The Climate Action Tracker, you'll have already seen on the right, so I won't go into any detail on it, but it's basically showing that we're already in a position where global temperatures have increased by 1.2 degrees. to limit the global warming to the 1.5 degrees by 2100 in line with the 2015 Paris Agreement goal, steep emissions reductions are urgently required. However, under current policies and actions, the global temperatures are predicted to increase by 2.7 degrees by 2100. So what is Warwick District Council doing in terms of adaptation? So as mentioned earlier by Dave, we have our South Warwickshire Climate Change Action Programme, which sets out 3 ambitions, and each of those ambitions has its own action plan. Ambitions 1 and 2 are largely focused around mitigation, but ambition 3 is focused on adaptation, with the aim to enable our environment and communities to have adapted to the potential of at least a 3-degree rise in global temperatures by 2100. And the Ambition 3 action plan is based on 8 high priority risks, which are shown on the right-hand side of this slide, which were identified by the Climate Change Committee in their recent UK Climate Change Risk Assessment. Under the Climate Change Act 2008, there's a duty for government to assess the risks of climate change every 5 years and then use this to produce a national adaptation programme. So they commissioned the Climate Change Committee to conduct this risk assessment, and they'll shortly start drafting the national adaptation programme, which will hopefully be published towards the end of next year. And these are the 8 high priority risks. So risks to things like habitats and species, soil health, our natural carbon stores, crops, livestock and commercial trees, supply of food, goods and vital services, power system failure, risks to human health, and risks to the UK from climate change impacts overseas as well. And in addition, in our action plan, we've also included an extra risk around water consumption and managing the water cycle. So in terms of our climate change adaptation action plan, this is mainly focused on these 5 key actions. So firstly, ensuring that the council is resilient to climate change to minimise service disruption. So just to give a few examples, so ensuring that we've got emergency response plans tested and up to date, considering the potential to deliver services in different ways or at different times to ensure little or no disruption, ensuring our council buildings and housing are adapted and resilient to both hot and cold conditions. And we've also got our South Warwickshire local plan, which is being worked on at the moment, so adopting key policies in that to do things like protect and enhance biodiversity and natural carbon stores, enable flood prevention infrastructure, supporting local food production and various other things that are listed there. The South Warwickshire local plan obviously looks to the future, but we also want to ensure that adaptation is a key consideration in our current local plan and planning policies as well. So number 3, another key action is reviewing our management plans for our parks and open spaces to ensure resilient species, enhanced biodiversity and protection of our natural carbon stores. And our green spaces team at the council and their partners have already done lots in terms of adaptation, including things like moving to more sustainable planting schemes that can better withstand heat and drought conditions, leaving areas of long grass in parks for biodiversity and carbon capture, rewilding wherever possible to allow natural growth so that species are naturally adapted to the local climate conditions, and planting a mix of tree species to help reduce the spread and impact of pests and disease, and consideration of different tree species as well that are more adapted to potentially warmer climates. There are other things that they'd like to do as well in terms of adaptation, and these can all be captured in the management plans for our parks and open spaces. We obviously have our commitment as well as a council to plant 160,000 trees in Warwick District, 1 for every resident, by 2030. And in terms of adaptation, this will help in terms of providing natural cooling, flood alleviation, soil protection, enhanced biodiversity and lots more. And then lastly, really important thing is to work closely with key partners and support them in their adaptation plans as well. So just to give a few examples, Warwickshire County Council, the Environment Agency, Severn Trent Water, National Farmers Union, and many more. So we have our action plan, and it was really where to start. So we felt an important starting point really was to better understand the risks of climate change in terms of the services that the council provide, so that we can then prioritise action. So to help us with this, we've asked the Met Office to work on some climate change predictions for Warwick District using their scientific modelling tools. And we're also currently running lots of workshops for different teams across the council. For example, Green Spaces team, environmental health, housing, planning, to get a better understanding from them as to what these predicted changes in climate will mean to the services that we provide. and to understand what action they're already taking and also what more is needed to reduce the impacts on our communities, infrastructure and the natural environment and more. And one of the outcomes of these workshops is to incorporate these risks into our council service plans to ensure that we're working to prepare and adapt. Just to give a couple of examples of the risks we've identified so far through the workshops, things like managing the risk of wildfire. So this summer we had some communications campaigns to raise awareness of the risks, and we tried to increase patrols of key areas where possible with our ranger team, and we can hopefully build on this to be better prepared in future. And there's also managing flood risk as well by ensuring that the council managed flood alleviation schemes are in full working order. So for example, Welsh's Meadow just round the corner from here that provides flood relief for the River Lem, and all of the sustainable urban drainage systems that are in our housing developments as well that we help to manage. So we also want to start raising the profile of climate change adaptation. So talk and action across the world has been mainly focused on mitigation to date, and adaptation has been somewhat neglected. So mitigation and adaptation are obviously equally as important and go hand in hand. We want to help communities, businesses and others prepare for the changing climate, give them practical ways that they can help deal with extreme weather that we're likely to experience, and show them also what's being done locally in terms of adaptation. Which brings me to the last point on the slide. If there's anyone here today that has any information on local adaptation work, we'd be really keen to hear about it, and please come and find us at the council stand once the presentations are finished, or feel free to leave details in one of the comments boxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. We now have two for the price of one. Mary Pearson from Bar Zero unfortunately has got COVID, but so instead we've got two people, Kirsty Healy and Liz Harrison Hall from Bar Zero. That was the slides. They are down arrow, okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear? Yes. Oh, good. Right, we're very impromptu this morning. We just got told today that we had to come and do it, so we're doing it. Who are we? Bar Zero, our name, comes from the village of Barford, where we live, which is very close to Hampton Lucy, but we don't seem to be on your grapevine. And a few years ago, we set up our action group to try and get our own village to be net zero. We're working on the basis that individual action, as a lot of people have said, can make a lot of difference. And we're trying to get our community to make that difference. And in these slides, we're just going to give you a taster of some of the things that we've tried to do over the few years that we've been running. So that's our guiding principles that you can see. And the key things: reduce, reuse, repair, recycle. And what are the recover. I'm sure you all know them, but that's what we try and do. Yeah? Okay?
Okay. One of the most successful projects we've set up is a repair cafe, which happens once a month in the local Scout hut. And we make a few cakes and sausage rolls and serve tea and coffee, and it's become quite a feature of the community once a month. And this is a little video about it. Or even tomorrow, if you're desperate. Yeah. 2 till 4, Barford Scout Hut. But the repair cafe has been very successful, and we get a steady stream of people coming every month. And we also have a collection point there for recycling things difficult to recycle, like blister packs, corks, toothpaste tubes, soft plastics, and we then take that on to TerraCycle or other points of... Sorry, can you hear me?
I'm turning around. No.
And it's all about spreading the word for people to reuse and repurpose things. We also have a very active Barford buy and sell Facebook page. So people offer things either for free or to sell, which can then be rehomed within the community, which has been popular again. And we're trying to set up a Barford Borrow scheme, so that if you happen to have a lawn scarifier, you can, which is only used probably once a year, sits in your garage, you can lend it around to other villagers, and it hopefully stops people having to buy so much stuff. Next one. Okay. Yeah, we've done that one. Yep.
Okay, well, one of our initiatives funded by the Green Shoots Fund, thank you very much, is to plant a community hedge. Those of you who know Barford at all know that we have a magnificent bypass, but it's very loud traffic, a lot of pollution. We have a community orchard next to it. So we applied to plant 400 metres, I think, of native hedge along that barrier. And we have some native hedge growers in Barford who kindly donated the plants, and, as I say, funded by Green Shoots. Another initiative that we've taken up is a grow your own vegetable truck. Unlike some other parish councils, our parish council regards us more of a buzzing wasp or something, rather than an organisation that should be actively supported. So rather than ask them if we could dig up the village green and plant vegetables, we got this small vegetable truck, which we've used with herbs and vegetables. People can pick your own. Sometimes people misunderstand, and we found people digging the whole plants up because it says help yourself. But that doesn't quite do it. But that's been quite a popular initiative, hasn't it? We've also, on Plant Your Own, we've run seed planting sessions in our repair cafe, and we specially run sharpen your secateurs and sharpen your hedge trimmers at the beginning of the growing season.
We alert the village to what we're planning by a monthly article in the local village magazine, Village Voices. And we try and have a few community events. We have a party usually in January each year to combine with our AGM, to make it a bit more exciting, and have quizzes and trying to get more community engagement with our ideas.
And plastic free.
And plastic free, of course.
And we've supported some national campaigns. These are a few. We try and have a sculpture, again, a bit of guerrilla warfare on the village green. We put it up and hope no one complains too much. So this is the one we did for plastic free July last year. Eco Halloween, I don't know if you've seen that the latest fashion in Halloween is for terrible costumes, and they're so plastic and they're so tacky. So we put a laundry basket in the village shop and asked people to donate costumes that their children have grown out of, and take out costumes as well. We'd like, and Pat was saying about getting people to take on roles, we'd like the school committee to take that on from us, but in Barford we find it quite difficult to actually get other people to do things, don't we? And that's something that's... we've also, more recently, supported the Great Green Week, where we had an exhibition in our village hall, where Alice came and the yeah. And but I don't know, I'm looking at this audience here, we find it very difficult to get younger people to actually join in, even though it's their children, it's their lives which are much more affected than ours. Okay.
So, what next? We're trying to plant some wildflowers on the village green, again, to help with insects, biodiversity, bees, pollination. The borrowing scheme I mentioned, the Barford Borrow. We've also applied again to the Green Shoots Fund for some equipment to go round and a heat gun to go round and check people's houses for where they're suffering lots of heat loss. We're trying to work with our joint parish council and the local school. And we're setting up a programme of talks for the winter evenings on home composting and various other topics. And trying to get rid of plastics all the time.
Yeah. But we do say that we cannot do it on our own, and we do need, one of the big things with rural communities is transport. 44% on your slides emissions. We need the county council to provide us with a bus that goes to Leamington. We need safe walking and safe cycling to be as a matter of priority if Barford is actually ready to reduce its footprint. Oh, she said it there. I thought we were on the last slide, but it's...
It's encouraging that so many people are trying, so many different groups today are trying to make a difference. And I think the more we can work together, as David says, the more positive effect we can have. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and thank you for asking.
Well, thank you, Kirsty and Liz, at the 11th hour having to come in and do that. But I know that they're very keen. As a Barfordian myself, they do an awful lot of work, so thank you. Before I ask Dave to sum up, I would just like to say a few thank yous. First of all, thank you all for your contributions and for turning up and being such a good audience. I'd also like to thank Chris, who looked after all the technical side as well as the photography. And I'd like also to thank Dave and his staff who put this all together. So very, many thanks to all of you. So thank you. And I'd like to now call upon Dave to sum up, please.
Thank you. Before I sum up, I did want to just mention one more thing that I think hopefully will be of interest to people in the room. Warwick District Council and Stratford District Council have been successful in a bid to an organisation called UK 100, who have provided us with essentially funding, financial support to do more local climate engagement. And our bid to that programme was very, very much focused on rural areas and villages and trying to galvanise local action within rural areas, but also importantly, to ensure that the district councils, Stratford District Council and Warwick District Council, are listening to what local people are saying in those rural areas about how the district councils can support that work. So what we've just been hearing from Barzira and throughout the day is absolutely right at the heart of what we would like to sort of build on and to do more on across the whole of South Warwickshire. So a number of people in the room have been part of this programme and have been advising the councils and our sort of experts who are supporting us in it, called an organisation called Involve. So we've been getting advice from a steering group about how to roll this out, and we are now at the point where we have a programme which we will be publicising shortly. So please do look out for that. Great opportunity to galvanise some of that local action, I hope, and certainly a great opportunity for continuing the dialogue between district councils, parish councils and local community action in rural areas. Alan's asked me to try and summarise it. So it's a tough thing to do, and I'm sure we've all taken away something different from today. But what I am sure about is that from the range of speakers that we've heard, there's something for everybody. We've heard some really great practical talks about things that are already happening across Warwickshire, things that can give us a huge amount of encouragement and inspiration. And I really, really would encourage you to use the networking time that we've got coming up to continue the sort of conversations and to build on the things you've heard, to ask questions, and of course to share your ideas in the ballot box that's available there, or just to share your ideas with each other. I know just from the short amount of conversation, the conversations I was having in the short amount of time we had during the first break, I found myself talking about bees and pollination. I found myself talking about low carbon village halls, cycle lanes, all sorts of different things that just in that 20 minutes. And all of those conversations were really practical, really useful, and things that I really keen to follow up. I think the last thing I wanted to say really was to go back to the strapline for today, which was about global action and local action. We've heard a lot about local action. I think it's fair to say that those of us in the room here got lots and lots of ideas, lots and lots of stuff going on, and that's absolutely brilliant. The real challenge, of course, for all of us is to try and spread that so that the local action grows and so that we involve more people. And I think we as a district council are keen to be part of that, but we can't do it on our own. And the partners and the community action that's taking place is very much a part of that. So it is about us all working together. And I think that's been a key message that's come across from quite a few of the speakers. But I also wanted to reflect back on that global action part of the strapline as well. And it relates to what Alan was saying at the beginning and what David contributed from the Warwickshire Climate Alliance and so on. We do need to be recognising that there needs to be that global action. And, hopefully starting tomorrow with COP27, we'll see leaders from across the globe come together and get us closer to that 1.5 degrees. We need that kind of context to be helping us. And that's really going to happen by raising awareness locally and getting as many people talking to and lobbying for that kind of change at a national level as well. So I think there's been some really interesting contributions about that too. Thank you to all the speakers for sticking to the time. Been really grateful for that because it's allowed us to finish pretty much on time and make sure that we've got plenty of networking time before you all need to go. So please do stay. But I did want to say one last thing and to particularly mention Callum, who has been the person that's put in most of the hard work to make this happen, along with Chris as well. So I just want to say thanks Callum for making this happen. He stood quietly in the background and kept a low profile, but I just want to call him out there. So thanks, Callum. But especially thanks to all of you as well. Your contributions have been great.